Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Jeff sent me a note from the farthest corner of the world about something that happened, but this could happen anywhere on some level. But from news.com.au, Fergus Ellis wrote this: Supreme Court judge arrested and charged before unusual closed court session. A Supreme Court judge arrested and charged. Now, this did not happen in the U.S. It happened in Tasmania. And many Americans, all we know about Tasmania is there's a thing called Tasmanian devil that is in the cartoons with Bugs Bunny. And I'm not sure how accurate that is as far as zoologists go, but another story altogether. A Supreme Court judge arrested and charged with assault and emotional abuse. A Supreme Court judge is facing criminal offenses for the first time in 200 years after the Tasmanian man was charged with assault and emotional abuse. Supreme Court Justice Gregory Geeson, 62 years old, appeared before Hobart Magistrates Court in an out-of-session sitting on Friday night after he was charged with those two offenses. The media was not allowed in to view the proceedings, with the Tasmanian Department of Justice confirming the court was restricting any reporting of the name of the affected person, which I'm guessing would be a victim, in accordance with the Family Violence Act. The justice was granted bail, and the matter will be heard on February 6th. Supreme Court judge was reportedly escorted from the building using a back entrance to avoid waiting media outside who somehow knew what was going on. Tasmania police confirmed a 62-year-old Hobart man had been arrested and charged on Friday, but they were not giving out names, and so they kind of pieced this thing together like a puzzle. Tasmania police spokesperson said the man has been charged with one count of common assault, as well as one count of emotional abuse. The justice was appointed to the Tasmanian Supreme Court in November of 17, having practiced law for nearly 40 years. 40 years. In a dramatic turn, the Chief Justice was forced to stand down, the judge in this case here, but there were no details given at the time. So the Chief Justice said, that guy's off the bench, stand down. But it had not said why. In a short statement to the media, the Attorney General and Minister for Justice said a Supreme Court judge had been asked to take leave without further notice upon the command of the Chief Justice. And that's one thing you always wonder about. What would happen if, because we hear from time to time judges who get in trouble with the law and get arrested. But it's almost always trial court judges as far as criminal things go. And what would happen if a Supreme Court justice of the United States got busted for some crime that normally wouldn't make the headlines if it had just been some average person off the street? It could happen. But I got to give him credit, hasn't happened yet. The statement said, today I met with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in relation to a significant matter involving a judge. The Chief Justice has asked the judge to take leave until further notice. So that judge is off on leave. Sometime in February, it'll probably come to a boil because at that point they're going to court. And then the question is, will they actually try something or will they work something out? And from the sounds of it, it sounds like it may have involved a family member. I'm speculating at that point, but it says assault and emotional abuse, and they don't release the name of the affected person. And I understand the Family Violence Act might not mean necessarily your direct family, although it very well could, but they did cite that as well. Now, a lot of Americans, I joked earlier about the Tasmanian devil, a lot of Americans don't know much about Tasmania, but it's an island state of Australia. So I suppose an equivalent here would be like Hawaii to the U.S., okay? It's a state, but it's an island, a group of islands, right? So it's located 240 kilometers to the south of the Australian mainland, separated from it by the Bass Strait. And so I could figure out 240 kilometers, but I'm a busy man. And of course, they measure things in metric down there. So we have no idea how many miles that is, but it's 240 kilometers off of the Australian mainland. And it is an archipelago containing the southernmost point of the country. That is, of course, according to Wikipedia. Now, one of the things I like to do when I ask myself how big a place is, everything's big in Australia, first of all. Okay, so I'm not going to go off land mass here because Tasmania itself is a large archipelago. But the population of Tasmania, according to Wikipedia, is 541,000 people. Don't know how many Tasmanian devils there are, but 541,000 people. And I went and checked because I was curious to know if there were any states in America that were populated at roughly the same number. And the least populous state in the U.S., according to my records, is Wyoming. And it has a population of 578,000 people. So they have a few more people than Tasmania. So take the population of Wyoming and put it on a big island off the coast of Australia, and there you have Tasmania. So the funny thing of this is a very good friend of mine in high school hosted an exchange student for a year or two, and the exchange student was from Tasmania. I kid you not. And talk about something, and I've heard stories, but talk about something that was, a real conversation starter in America. A young lady in the lunchroom who's got an accent. Where are you from? Tasmania. Really? It's a long way to come. But so that, and the only other reference, and I have to tell you, there's a TV show that was on for a while, sitcom called News Radio. And I enjoyed that program. I thought it was very, very good. It was well written. It was set in a radio station, and the radio stuff made no sense at all. They just needed a workspace to put them in, so they put them in a radio station. And Phil Hartman was on the show. And Phil Hartman, of course, was from Saturday Night Live originally, or The Groundlings, I think even before that. And he did a bunch of voices really, really well. But weirdly, on News Radio, he didn't. I think they wanted to explore more of him as simply an actor, a comedic actor. And so he didn't do a lot of voices on that show, but he played a kind of a goofy character. And you recall that Phil Hartman was killed by his wife, murdered. And when it happened, obviously a tragic thing hit the news. And News Radio, I believe, was still shooting a season when that happened. So they had to halt production and then figure out a way to write around the fact that this character's gone, which they did. And at one point, they said, we're going to replace the character, on the show, with another person who's going to come in and take over his role. And they brought in John Lovitz. And John Lovitz apparently was a friend of Phil Hartman's, but also was on Saturday Night Live. And everybody remembers John Lovitz because, that's the ticket guy. And very, very good at playing certain kinds of characters in particular. And when he got there, he's being interviewed, and they asked him, what other jobs have you had? And he starts rattling off radio stations he worked at and what names he used at them. And he said he had worked at a jazz station down south where his on-air name was the Jasmanian Devil. And what's funny about that is I love that entire run of that program, News Radio. And if you said, Steve, name a line that really made you laugh from that show, it was John Lovitz saying that he used the air name, the Jasmanian Devil, on a jazz station down south. I don't know why. It just strikes me as funny. Air names can be funny. Don't forget the Geeter with the Heater, who passed away not so long ago. But far afield here. The point here is that Tasmania is an island and a state. Yes, make sure you use the right terms here. In Australia, they have a Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has judges on it. One of the judges has been arrested and has been charged. And due to the nuances of the law down there, they did some of this stuff before an unusual closed court session. So the news is being forced to speculate about what's going on, but we will find out, I assume. But then again, I'm not sure necessarily how things always go on down there legally. So Fergus Ellis wrote that for news.com.au. Jeff sent it. Thanks a lot. Supreme Court judge arrested and charged before the unusual closed court session. Questions or comments, put them below this. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. If it weren't for the inventor of the television, we'd still be eating frozen radio dinners.